Good evening. We're back to the study of the Spirit's book. Today, we are starting the last chapter of book 2, which is the spiritual world, and chapter 11 is called the Three Kingdoms, where, of course, we're going to talk about minerals, plants, animals, and humans. Before we start to the questions, let us give a disclaimer here on the subject, because of course, as we evolve, humanity evolves and progresses, the definition of three kingdoms is much more used today in theological and spiritual studies than in science and biology. Biologically, the mineral kingdom is not even considered a kingdom because biology doesn't study it. So it got separated from it. And biology considers 6 or 7 different kingdoms from bacteria until humans. But for the purpose of our studies, and because it's easier for us to understand, and we are not going to go into the technicalities of biology or and other scientific studies, we are trying to understand our nature as eternal spirits and how the three kingdoms, as it was defined in the couple of centuries ago and until middle of last century or later last century, how it does apply to our daily lives and our evolution as eternal spirits. And it's important because as we understand in Spiritism that everything progresses, the kingdoms themselves, the three kingdoms, interact with one another, and there is progress from the mineral to the vegetable to the humans. It's not a sudden transformation. It is a smooth evolutionary path, but we're going to talk about it later. But so let us not get distracted by what biology and chemistry, the modern biology, modern chemistry tells us about the different kingdoms, because for our purpose in terms of understanding Spiritism and our evolution as eternal spirits, what we have here in the Spirit's book is more than enough. It's enough for us to understand and to learn about our nature as eternal spirits. Right, Elmo? Anything to add here? No?
No, I think it's perfect.
All right. Okay, Philip, please start for us 585.
What do you think of the splitting of the natural world into 3 kingdoms, or even 2 classes of inorganic or organic beings? Some add the human species as a 4th class. Which of these divisions is preferable? They are all sound, depending upon your point of view. From a materials perspective, they are only inorganic or organic beings, while from the moral perspective, there are 4 levels. Clear features distinguish these 4 levels, although their extremes seem to blend into each other. Inert matter makes up the mineral kingdom, possesses mechanical force only. Plant, made up of inert matter, are endowed with life. Animals, made up of inert matter, as well are endowed with life and have a limited instinctive intelligence that gives them the consciousness of their existence and individuality. Lastly, human beings possessing all that is found in plants and animals are above all the other classes due to unlimited superior intelligence that makes them aware of their future, the perception of things that are beyond the physical realm, and the knowledge of God. I can't see if there's anything else.
No, that's it. That's the end of the question. Thanks. So we are created in the beginning, we are the spiritual principle, right? God creates what is called you think of a pyramid, right? You have the spiritual principle here, where the spirits come from, and you have everything else, which is matter, or the universal fluid, the universal cosmic fluid, where all matter derives. The spiritual principle, when we start our journey as a spiritual principle. We go through, we are not. We go through the mineral phase, the vegetable phase, the animal phase, until we become a spirit, an individual spirit, and that's when we become humans. When we become an individual spirit is when we start developing our free will. We have the free will that starts we start to use our free will to make choices, and we start to create responsibilities or karma with our actions. So animals do not have karma. Plants, of course, don't even have karma. So what are we learning as a spiritual principle when we are, and I think the best word is, we are not a rock, we are not a tree, we are not a cockroach. We are associated with the minerals, we are associated with the plants as a spiritual principle, and we are associated with animals. Of course, animals has a wide range, and if you go to biology, you have the bacteria and everything. We were never a bacteria or a cockroach. We were associated on our progress, learning things through this evolution. So in the mineral phase, we learn aggregation, right? Rocks are aggregated, their minerals aggregate and disaggregate. That's how we learn. When we go to the vegetable, the vegetables we start to have the word escape, Mechanical is on the mineral kingdom. On the plants, Elmo, help me here, is the this instinct is on the animal. It's the autonomic functions, right? That we have, right? Our heart beats, we are liking or not. This is autonomic function. The breathe we can control, so it's more instinctive, right? So in the plants, we start developing the autonomic functions. So the plants, they'll grow, they go to they look for the sun. They don't think, it's autonomic, right? It's automatic in terms. The animals, no, they already have a freedom of action in the sense of instinct. They act on instincts. We humans, we have everything, right? Our matter, segregation, that comes from the animal kingdom. Our autonomic functions, our heart beating, our lung expanding, and we go to sleep, and our body continues functioning. This is autonomic, right? Then we have the instincts, right? If a dog starts chasing you, your instinct is to run away, right? Or kick the dog, depending on how you react. But you don't think, you react. This is instinct, right? And of course, after you kick the dog, you think about it. Why did I do that, right? That's the intelligence that we are using. Okay, so the spirits, they tell us here that all the classification is for our own benefit. We are making the classification. For them, as I say, they're all sound, depending upon your point of view. They don't make the distinction there. The only distinction that they make from a material perspective, matter, is inorganic and organic beings. Meaning, inorganic beings, what's the difference between inorganic and organic beings? Inorganic beings do not have vital fluid. They don't die. They are not born, they don't die. Plants, animals, humans, we have vital fluid that animates our physical life, plants, animals, and humans. So plants are born, then die. Animals are born, then die. We the same. Rocks and the mineral kingdom don't have the vital fluid. So the inorganic beings do not have vital fluid, but they are all formed. So what's the difference between us and a rock? Is that we are organic beings. What defines us as organic beings? We have the vital fluid that we receive when we are born, right? That we're going to carry, and when we die, this vital fluid, if there is anything left, is dissipated or used. The notion, the idea of vampires came from the vital fluid being dissipated in the spiritual world. Now, someone that is very old and is dying slowly, when this person dies, has almost no vital fluid or no vital fluid. Someone who is 20 years old and died in an accident has a lot of vital fluids. How this vital fluid is dispersed in the spiritual world depends on how you behave, how you are, who you are as an eternal spirit. If you are open and receptive to receive the assistance of the spiritual benefactors, they will remove your vital fluid and dissipate. If you lived a life, a very material life, only thinking about yourself, causing harm to others and causing a lot of disturbances, they are not going to protect you, not because they don't want to, but because our own inner self, our own way of living do not allow this external help to come to us, right? Is when you say here, can you help everyone here incarnate once? No, there are people that are suffering, are struggling, but they don't want to be helped. You think about some drug addicts, alcoholics, right? They don't want to be helped. If they don't want to be helped, you cannot help them. So you transfer this to the spiritual world. Spirits that do not want to be helped, even unconsciously, are not going to be helped. Spirits that are open to receive help and assistance will be helped. That's the vital fluid, it's what animates plants, animals, and humans. And then the Spirit says, from the moral perspective, there are 4 levels. But they blend into each other. How do they blend into each other? Think of plants, carnivore plants, right? They are transitioning into the animal phase, right? Because they already eat insects. So it's a beginning of moving into animal phase, the evolution of the spiritual principle, not a plant that is going to become an animal. It's the spiritual principle that is evolving from the plant to the animal, and it's learning how to digest and the very primitive forms of digestion, right? On the mineral to the vegetable, there are. I remember last time we went through here, I found an example, but I forgot the example. I looked for it today, couldn't find. I know there are some transition between minerals and plants. Elmo, you remember? No.
Virus.
Sorry?
Virus.
Virus?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
This virus, it's still debatable if it's considered a living being, because it doesn't perform all the things that are needed to be qualified as human being. It doesn't reproduce, replicates, but does not reproduce. It does not excrete. It does not have any functions that qualify as a living thing. So it is a transition of coming from the inorganic and become organic, so having by primary only nucleotides.
There you go. Thanks.
There are some crystals, and I forget the name of them, and deep in caves that they have noted that they do replicate as well. They kind of grow. by aggregation. That could be also a transition period as well.
Okay. And it's easier to see the animals, right? You see the different categories of animals, right? The fish are less evolved than reptiles, and reptiles are less evolved than mammals, right? The spirits say that the spiritual principle that animates the mammals are already individuals. Let us be very careful not to think that we were dogs. But when the spiritual principle is going through the mammal phase, it's already individualized, okay? A fish, and the best example, right? When you see a school of fish, don't they fly all together, performing the same things? You see the one spiritual principle animating a bunch of fish, and they are doing all the same thing. That's the best example for us to understand the spiritual principle animating. And when you get to mammals, of course, people like to say that their dogs and cats have personalities, and they do have, right? They are different than one another. They have their own characteristics. It's a rudimentary intelligence. It's already the first signs of intelligence. We don't have a word besides intelligence, and that's why we use intelligence. But you see that a dog can learn tricks, a cat can learn tricks. So if it's not intelligence, it's not instinct, right? They are learning things. Yes. Yeah, because the instinct is they are going to do the same thing, right? And they don't teach their offspring. And dogs and cats and mammals, they teach their offspring, right? It doesn't go very far, but they teach. But the non-mammals, the less evolved, of course, there are, you talk about dolphins, you talk about whales, but we are still going to learn a lot about this. But in terms of generalization, for us to understand better, the spirit tells us that when you become a mammal, the intelligent principle is already individualized in that mammal. Okay, and even mammals, there are mammals more evolved than others, right? But
Well, a quick addition here. I was reading, I don't know why that popped up on my screen on my computer, but in Portugal and somewhere in Europe, that I forgot where. Besides Portugal, of course, there are rocks. I don't know the translation because I read the article in Portuguese. Rocha palideira. So they kind of the rocks. They kind of. It's not that a piece of the rock kind of pops out, but small pieces you can see on the floor, and then the rock itself you see caved exactly the same size as the little pieces on detached from the rock.
maybe an
How does
example of
that
the
happen?
transition, right?
Because maybe that's a transition because
Yeah.
you see the rocks with all the kind of the holes itself. I don't know how to call it, and then the small pieces around it.
Yeah, maybe it's the beginning of a transition into to vegetables, right? Okay, all right, 586. You're on mute, Philip. If you're reading, you're on mute.
Are plants conscious of their existence? No, they do not think. They only possess organic life.
Read the next thing, because I think we need to talk about both together.
587. Do plants feel anything? Do they feel pain when they are damaged or dismembered? Plants receive the physical impressions that act upon matter, but they have no perceptions. Without perceptions, they do not feel pain.
Okay, the spirits are telling us that plants feel no pain. I know there are people that are going to think that plants have pain because they see, they experience the the suffering of the plants when something happens to them, but it is not pain as we understand pain. Okay, it's a different thing. They go through the transformation and the I don't think we have a word for it, right? But it's important here for the spirit said plants are not conscious of their existence. That's very clear, and that's easy for us to understand. If they're not conscious of their existence, they only possess organic life. They don't have anything besides organic life. But they receive the physical impressions that act upon matter, right? They grow, you cut them, they need sun, they need fertilizers, they need other things, and they will be affected by what we do with them, right? A rock, you can just destroy it or change the place, but you cannot do much else. A plant, there's a lot of things you can do. So a plant, if you don't treat it, will die, right? Does it suffer because it's dying? No, it does not. What does the plant feel? I don't think we have an explanation, and I don't think we have words, because I don't think it's feel. But they go through an experience that is also building towards what we are going to call pain in the animal and the human phase, because animals have pain, right? We can see clearly that animals suffer from pain. And actually, there was a question that was posed to Emmanuel. If animals don't have karma, why do they suffer? Why do they have pain? Which is a very good question. And Emmanuel said, it's part of the evolutionary process of the animal, right? We evolve, think of us. We evolve through trials and atonements, right? Atonements, consequence of our own actions that we have to face the consequence, and we may go through pain, suffering, etc. Trials are learning opportunities. Don't we sometimes go through pain in our trials? But they're not consequence of our past. They are learning opportunities. So you think of that and you apply to the animals, and you understand why animals will go through pain. It's on the evolutionary process. You know, we talked the other day about the pain, right? The animals going through pain, and if sacrificing animals was something, what was the Spiritism view on sacrificing animals that are going through suffering, right? And I told Luisa that asked me the question, I don't think we have anything on the literature. There is a book by Irvenia Prado called The Spiritual Life of Animals that she talks about it, but she doesn't really cover it. But my own 1 cent here is, you know, if we are going not to sacrifice any animal, it cannot be any animal, right? We cannot kill the insects that are disturbing us. We cannot kill the cockroaches that are infesting our houses, because they're all animals. And I don't think that's the right answer. I don't think we are doing it correctly. I think we're still struggling to deal with how to treat animals. But Emmanuel has told us that the role of animals in our planet is to help us, to assist us in different forms and depending on the animals. So how they are going to assist us, for a very long time, they served as food, right? And they still do. Are we going to need them for food eternally? No. Eventually, we're going to learn that we don't need to eat animals, but we're still not there, and we still are trying to learn more and understand more about the process. Okay, so this is all because of pain. So animals feel pain, but they feel pain because it's on their evolutionary path of progress, right? So if you accidentally kill an ant that is here in the floor, right? Does it feel pain? We don't know. Maybe. right? But it's told that we don't feel pain when we die suddenly because of an accident, right? So a lot for us to learn still. Elmo, any comments here?
Yeah, I think the problem with trying to understand if plants has suffer pain or this and that is that we create parallels according to ourselves, to our understand of suffering, to our understand of pain. Now, plants does not have a nervous system, and as much as we know, pain is a neurogenic response to some stimuli. So if plant does not have a nervous system, likely it doesn't have any pain. How does it react to external input? As the Spirit says, yes, they do. But in a way that we cannot create a parallel to us humans, since we have a nervous system that changed the whole thing. So I don't think we can even start a conversation if plants suffer, have pain or not, because we cannot create a parallel of plants and human beings.
Okay, good.
588
588.
is the force that attracts plants to each other independent of their will. Yes, because they do not think. It is a mechanical force of matter acting on matter, which they cannot resist.
Law of attraction, right? It's a mechanical force. Plants attracts plants to each other, or plants that are going to look for nutrition in the soil, in the sun, going to grow their roots towards where they can find nutrients. That's everything is mechanical. It's not the will of the plant, because they don't have will. Okay.
$589.
Yep.
Some plants, such as the touch me not and the Venus flytrap, have movements that demonstrate great sensitivity and even a sort of will, particularly in the case of the latter, whose leaves capture the fly that lands on it and even seem to set a trap to kill it. Are these plants endowed with the faculty of thought? Do they have a will, and do they form an intermediate class between the vegetable and animal kingdoms? Are they transition points from the one to the other? Everything in nature is in transition due to the very fact that everything is different and connected. Plants do not think, and therefore have no will. From the oyster that opens its shell to all the zoophytes, they only have a blind natural instinct and do not think. The human body provides us with examples of similar movements that take place without any participation of the will, such as the digestive and circulatory systems. The pylorus closes upon contact with certain substances, as if denying them entry. This is the same action as that of the touch me not, the movements of which do not necessarily imply perception, much less will.
So here, what Kardec is talking, or the spirits are talking, is the transition between vegetable and animal, right? So the Venus flytrap and the touch me not, that shows sensitivity, or that captures the insects that lands on them. So again, the spirits reinforce the transition, that everything in nature is in transition. There are no leaps and bounds in nature, right? Everything goes in transition. But when you reach the animal phase, is instinct. In the plants is mechanical forces. In the animal is instincts, right? And then Kardec talks about what happens to us human beings, how we bring everything, right? If you read that the baby, the 9-month pregnancy, the baby goes through all the phases, right? From the mineral vegetable to the animal, to reflects everything in the evolutionary path of the baby until it becomes a human. It is the evolutionary path of the human body, right? And the pylorus here is a very interesting comparison that he makes with the touch me not, right? Because the pylorus rejects food when he has depending on the food. I know because my son had surgery with 40 days old because the pylorus closed and didn't open, and so he had no food was absorbed into the stomach. So that's when I learned that pylorus existed, but it closes in contact with certain substances, denying them entry, right? It opens and closes. Where does it come from? Have we seen the past? Yes, the touch me not plant is one that closes when you try to touch it. You see that those plants that close, right, when you try to touch them, right? That's a defense mechanism that they are learning, and that's going to be used by us human beings eventually, right? He talks here about the digestive and circulatory systems. They work independent of our will. Can we affect them? Yes, we can, with our minds and with our behaviors. Yes, we can affect them, but they work without us being aware of it, right? We eat the food and the digestive system starts to work, and we are not, we can feel something, but the process is independent of our will, right? So this comes all from this evolution and from the spiritual principle. Just a parenthesis here, right? This is a concept that I found even some spiritists have an issue with, that we spirits were once in the inferior kingdoms. I heard from spiritists talking that no, we were created by God as spirit, simple and ignorant. We didn't go through the other phases. Again, for me, it makes sense that our evolution goes through the different phases because it builds who we are today. The experiences that we go through, it builds who we are today. But just for you to know, there are, you hear even among spiritists, outside spiritism even more, right? But in spiritism, you hear a few that think that we were created already as an individual spirit. Okay. Okay, something there, no?
You want to go back to question 540?
540.
540, it states there from the atom to the archangel, right? That to me it makes sense if there is no leaps in evolution. If God is equal, just to everyone, that we all went to all phases.
Yeah.
I am the ones that on the side that we had experiences with the mineral. When you learn aggregation, when you learn things that are associated to inert matter, and I think, and there is a question that raised to you, that every intelligent principle would have to go to that period of transition somehow before it jumps into have experiences with the vegetable, and we all learn the autonomic system in the vegetables, and it continues to progress not as a spirit yet, but as intelligent principle. What I think happens, what I believe happens, and I think in in the book Evolution Two Words, says is that as intelligent principles, since we have no karma, since we all have to go through everything besides our will, because you don't have will yet, we go collectively. It's a bunch of us together have that experience in the mineral, a bunch of us, a block of intelligent principles, so to say, having that experience and move on until we get to the level that it can be individualized. So if there is a group of spiritualists who think that we already create individualized, I disagree.
I disagree also, but I just wanted to point that there are those that believe that. And I think it's, if you go to the spiritist literature, you're going to find that we are created as a spiritual principle and we evolve through all the
Absolutely.
different phases. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like spiritual creationism. Deplorable.
Okay.
Can't see the beginning of 589.
589. I think we already went through 589. No, we are in 590 now.
Okay. Do plants have an instinct of self-preservation that leads them to seek out what may be useful and avoid what would cause them harm? You may call it a sort of instinct, but that depends on your definition of the word. It is purely mechanical. When you see two bodies unite in chemical operations, it is because there is an affinity between them, but you do not call it instinct.
Yes. Again, it's our problem with words, right? Do the plants have an instinct of self-preservation? Yes. They look for sun, they look for nutrients, so they are trying to survive, right? They'll try everything to survive. Should we call it instinct? Probably not. Do we have a better word? I don't know. Survival? But survival what? Instinct, right? So as we, with this, we have always a problem with words. So the Spirit tells us, you may call it a sort of instinct, but it's purely mechanical. It's not instinct in the sense that we use the word here to discuss animals already, right? The development of instinct. But so, and then it talks about chemical, right? The chemical elements, when they see chemicals uniting or separating, depending on how they connect to each other. It's mechanical. You cannot say that instinctive. It's the same thing with plants, right? It's self-preservation, but it's not instinct, right? But again, if you say instinct of self-preservation and then explain that you are not using the instinct in the same sense that you use instinct in terms of animals, right? It's like the word love, right? There are so many different definitions of love. The Greeks have 7 different names for love, which I prefer, and I think it's much more encompassing of the definitions of the word, right? But you are going to use love for, you love your partner, you love your child, you love your work, and is it the same love? It's really not, right? I love God. This is the same thing that, so again, it's a problem with words, our limitation of words, right? Okay.
591.
Yeah.
In the higher worlds are the plants of a more perfect nature, like all other beings. Everything in those worlds is more perfect, but plants are always plants, animals are always animals, and human beings are always human beings.
Very interesting, this answer from the spirits, right? Because the question from Kardec, which is a great question, right? We're talking about Earth, a world of trials and atonements. And we know that there are worlds of regeneration, happy worlds, and perfect worlds, right? So do animals and plants also are more evolved? Because we spirits that inhabit those worlds are more evolved. So plants and animals are, and they say, yes, they are. But plants are always plants, animals are always animals, and human beings are always human beings. So what can we think of that? Of course, it's difficult for us to understand. It's easy for us to see what is behind us. You know, that's why we depict hell and these things so well. But it's very difficult for us to depict things we've never seen and we only barely heard of. So plants and animals in more evolved worlds serve the same function as they serve here. For us, in terms of course, here we use plants and animals for different things. Maybe we will use for different things there. Yes, maybe, but again, they are plants and they are animals and they serve for the world, for their specific purposes as human beings also. We know there are plants and animals in the spiritual world also, right? They are, animals don't spend time in the spiritual world unless it's necessary for humans or spirits that are there. So spirits use animals in the spiritual world if they are needed. If not, the process of coming back to a new incarnation, and it's not reincarnation. Reincarnation presupposes karma, right? Consequences and evolution. Animals incarnate or are born, or plants and animals. So the process is very quick in terms of animals, right? Dog dies, comes back as maybe a dog, maybe a cat, or maybe they continue their evolution. There is an evolutionary process in the spiritual world, yes, there is, but it's different from the evolutionary path of a spirit in the spiritual world, because of course the spiritual principle has to evolve also, and it evolves associating with things of matter, but it also can learn things in the spiritual world. What and how, we don't have the answer yet, but it's just for us to be aware that it is possible. The evolution happens on both sides of our existence. Okay, Elmo, anything here?
No, Joe. That question 591, it's the answer. It's always to me very hard to understand. How can a plant be more evolved and still be a plant? It's beyond me to understand that.
Yeah, I agree, because we don't have the capacity of imagining something that is beyond our anything that we have seen, right? But
Yeah,
but the answer from the spirits is very clear, right?
yeah, that's very clear.
Yeah. Okay.
Animals and humans?
I think I'm going to leave animals and humans for next week, because you know, it's 4th of July tomorrow. We all have a good holiday to prepare for, and we have 10 minutes left, and I think we can, and so we leave it for next week, and we start from the beginning when we're going to talk about animals and humans and the relationship, right? So for just a couple of notes, for this weekend, we don't have the Saturday talk by the United States Spiritist Federation because of the 4th of July, but we do have our study on Sunday, the book Action and Reaction. We are going to study chapter 7 of the book Action and Reaction. If you haven't studied with us yet, read the first 6 chapters and join us, because it's a very good book. So much to learn from that book. Okay. Some of our studies are closed for the month of July. The Tuesday Spiritism Menu, the Tuesday Spiritist group of Connecticut at 7 p.m. and the book club on Wednesday. They are all closed for the month of July, okay? So, but we will continue to have our Monday Fraternal Assistance meetings, that we're going to start a new book in a couple of weeks, Words of Eternal Life. If you haven't acquired the book, you can acquire here at the center or on our website. And we have our Thursdays and Sundays, we continue with our regular schedule. Okay? Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, John, for hosting, and thank you, Elmo, for assisting. Thank you, Philip, for reading for us this evening, and everyone who is here participating. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks to be together again as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Spirit's book, Book 2, Chapter 11, topic being the Three Kingdoms. The three kingdoms interact with one another, and they relate to our evolution as eternal spirits. We begin as a spiritual principle, and we go through the four levels, being the mineral, the plant, the animal, and the human, which would be the phase of mechanical, autonomic, instinct, and superior intelligence. Everything in nature is connected, and everything is in evolutionary transition. We have experiences associated with the four phases, and eventually we do become individualized. Everything in higher worlds are more perfect and serve specific purposes, of which we hope to have a better understanding at some point in our life. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all who are affiliated and all who are participating. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we go forth now and remind ourselves to be beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. Happy